This is the Charge Determiner Lab. In this lab, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking different rods and rubbing them with different materials and placing them up against this plastic rod, which will have a negative charge to determine the charge on the rod. The different rods that we're going to have the hard rubber rod, we are going to have the PVC rod, and the glass rod. We're also going to be using a metal rod, but we're going to be using that later. The different materials, we're going to have fur, we're going to have a plastic bag like you get at the grocery store, and some silk. So what we're going to do is we are going to put a negative charge on this plastic rod. So this plastic rod, you can see I put a little masking tape on one end, and I'm going to hold that end, and I'm going to rub the plastic rod with the fur to give the plastic rod a negative charge. Now, I probably want to do this after every time I switch rods, because sometimes that charge will leave the rod, and then you want to balance it carefully in the stirrups. And I know that this end of the rod has a negative charge, right? You can see it's even moving around a little bit. You can even see some fur sticking off the end. So now that we have a negative charge on this plastic rod, I am going to grab my hard rubber rod, and I'm just going to go in order of the material. I'm going to go fur, plastic, silk. So first up, I'm going to grab that fur, and I'm going to rub the hard rubber rod with it, and I'm going to place it next to this negative charge, and we're going to see what happens. Okay, you can see that plastic rod is repelling. Now I'm going to rub the rubber rod with that plastic bag. Okay, in this scenario, you can see they are being attracted to each other. Last one we're going to do for the hard rubber rod is the silk cloth. So you can see in this scenario, it is repelling. Next up is the PVC pipe. Now, since we're switching rods, I've already recharged the rod in the stirrups with a negative charge. So I'm going to rub the PVC pipe with this fur rod. And you can see that there is a repulsion. Next up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to rub the PVC pipe with the plastic bag. And you can see that there's an attraction. Lastly, what I'm going to do is I am going to rub the PVC pipe with the silk. And you can see that there is a repulsion. The next rod that I'm going to do is the glass rod. So I've already recharged the rod in the stirrups with that negative charge. I'm just going to grab that fur, rub the glass rod with the fur, and we'll see what happens. All right, you can see now these two are attracted. Next material is going to be the plastic bag. I'm going to rub the glass rod with the plastic bag. You can see that it is attracting. And the last material I'm going to use is the silk cloth. I'm going to rub the glass rod with the silk cloth, and you can see that it is attracting again. The next rod is going to be the metal rod. Now, I've already recharged the rod in the stirrups with this negative charge. The first thing we're going to do with the metal rod, I'm not going to rub it with any of these materials. I'm just going to place it there and just see what happens. So you can see, even without rubbing the metal rod, there still is an attraction. Now, next up, I'm going to do the fur. Okay, there's an attraction still. And I'm going to do the plastic bag. You can see that there was an attraction there. And last but not least, I'm going to do that silk cloth. Once again, there is an attraction. Now, based on whether there was an attraction or repulsion between the negative charge and the rod that was used, we should be able to determine the charge on the rod, because opposite charges attract and similar charges repel each other. Now, it does get a little tricky if there's an object with no charge, like when we did the metal and we didn't rub it with any of the cloths, or if I just place my hand there. You can see that there is an attraction. So it does get a little bit tricky with no charge. Now, the metal rod isn't really a great pick for this lab. And the reason why depends on whether it's an insulator or conductor, right? Are the electrons free to move in with it, or are they not free to move within it? Now, based on the charge on the rod, we should be able to determine, well, when I was rubbing the rod with the material, which way the electrons were traveling. Were they traveling from the material to the rod, or were they traveling from the rod to the material? Now, in this lab, you should be able to put together a triboelectric series. Now, the triboelectric series is a list of materials and their tendency to give up electrons or receive electrons, and it's just a ranking. Now, if some materials are above another material, they have the tendency to give up those electrons and become positive. Now, if that object below on the triboelectric series has the tendency to go negative and take those electrons. So based on these observations, we should be able to put together a triboelectric series of whether these materials have the tendency to take electrons or give those electrons away. Once again, this is the Charge Determiner Lab.